For at least 200 years, people have known about the harmful effects of lead. Benjamin Franklin even wrote letters describing its effects. Despite this, its use continued in cosmetics and paint as a stabilizing agent, in food and drinks as a sweetener, and traditional or homeopathic medicines. It was not regulated in the United States until the 1970s under the Consumer Product Safety Commission. In many developing countries, lead exposure continues to cause harm, causing as much as 12.5% of intellectual disabilities worldwide. Significantly less in developed countries due to government intervention, lead poisoning remains a severe disability and one of the most preventable causes of neurological problems in children. Like alcohol, which is a prenatal teratogen, lead interferes with fetal development and young children postnatal due to exposure and poor living conditions. Often in older homes or lower income developments. Prior to 1978, lead was used heavily in household paint, consumer products, and in older homes or homes which are not updated or mitigated. This is a serious risk. Although a frequent joke and common concern, eating paint chips, while clearly not advisable, is not the primary pathway of exposure. A child which is supervised is still at risk when lead from old paint is broken down into dust particles, which are then ingested. For infants and toddlers who experience their world through all of their senses, sucking on toys can expose them to lead and paint, especially those made in China or other countries without regulations. Prior to 1974, leaded gasoline resulted in emissions with high lead content, which contaminated soil and caused long-term exposure through ingestion, through hand-to-mouth activities of children. Lead, as a heavy metal, does not degrade or filter out of the soil and still exists as ambient lead, particularly in urban areas with historic high levels of traffic. With more awareness and government intervention restricting leaded gasoline and oversight in public housing, lead poisoning exposure has made major declines. Although rare in Western countries, extreme exposure can result in serious organ failure, coma, or even death. Typically, this sort of exposure is rare outside of industrial facilities, but at lower levels can be extremely harmful, resulting in poor brain development and behavior disorders. As adults, we still need to be concerned about lead exposure, but for pregnant women and developing children, this can be especially harmful. Adults typically absorb around 10 to 15% of the lead they are exposed to. Children and pregnant women, however, with developing bodies unable to distinguish between iron and calcium, absorb up to 80. In light of children's penchant for putting their fingers in their mouths, this is a real concern for parents.